In the heart of a bustling city named Brass, there lived a woman named Tessie. She is close to 40 years of age and had been married for 20 years. She and her husband were very rich, for God has blessed them with wealth, but they were childless. They have gone to different hospitals, ran several tests to ascertain the cause of their childlessness, but nothing was found. Being a deaconess in church and having all that she could do to conceive and nothing happened, she decided to leave everything to God. But one day, a fellow deaconess by name Mrs. Anna approached her and said, "My sister, I'm so concerned and disturbed about this childlessness, and I want to help. There's a place I'll take you to that once you get there, believe me, your problem will be solved." Mrs. Tessie, who had made up her mind to leave everything to God, told her that she's not interested. But Mrs. Anna persuaded her to try this last one, and if nothing comes out of it, she should not try again. After much persuasion, Mrs. Tessie accepted to go with her, and they agreed to go the next day by 6 p.m. Mrs. Tessie, knowing fully well that her husband will not allow her to go if she tells him the truth, decided to tell the husband that the women will have all-night prayers in the church. With that, the husband allowed her to go. By 6 p.m. the next day, Mrs. Tessie and Mrs. Anna hit the road. They drove for 5 hours before finally getting to their destination. When they got out of the car, Mrs. Tessie said to Mrs. Anna, "I don't like the aura of this place." But Mrs. Anna assured her the place is just a ministry, that the man makes use of just the Bible and olive oil, so there's nothing to worry about. Immediately they entered the place, the man in charge called Mrs. Tessie by name and told her everything about her and also why she came. He told her that she has come to the final bus stop, that after tonight her problem will be over. Before we continue, please support me by subscribing to this channel. It promises to be a good ride. Thank you for subscribing. Let's continue. Mrs. Tessie said, "Okay, let's start the prayers." But the man said they have to wait till midnight. At 12 midnight, the man brought out a Bible, a bottle of olive oil, a feeding bottle, a baby powder, and a goat. He asked Mrs. Tessie to kneel down. He muttered unknown words for about 15 minutes and asked Mrs. Tessie to back the goat and walk round the church building 7 times. But Mrs. Tessie asked, "Why a goat? I'm asking for a child, not a goat. At least let it be something that looks like a baby. A doll can do." But the man said, "A doll doesn't have life, so we go with something that has life." Mrs. Tessie wasn't comfortable with that, but she had no option. So she backed the goat and walked round the church saying, "God, give me a child as instructed by the man." But what she didn't know was when she was walking around with a goat on her back, the man went into his temple and was making serious incantation and enchantment. At the end of the 7th round, she came in and the man told her that everything is now okay and that they should go home. They went home and life went on. 6 weeks later, Mrs. Tessie started falling sick on and off. Her husband advised her to go to the hospital to run some tests. That was when she discovered that she was pregnant. The news spread like wildfire. Everyone was thanking God. She had a very smooth pregnancy journey, and in due time, she gave birth to a baby boy. The dedication was the talk of the town. Everybody was joyful as there was enough to eat and drink. After the dedication, days rolled into weeks and weeks rose into months. But this child was still the way he was when he was born. He can't sit, crawl, make sound, or do anything as expected of a developing child. The worst of them all is that he can't hold his head. At 8 months, you carry him the same way you carry a newborn baby. The only thing he does well is eating. This became a great concern to everyone, especially the father. They started going from one hospital to another, but nothing was found to be the cause. One day, their pastor visited them to see how the child was because they don't go out with the child. When he saw the situation of the child, he became very angry in his spirit and told all the church members to go on a week of fasting and prayer for the child. The church members wholeheartedly fasted for the child because the parents were well known and loved in the church. On the last day of the fasting and prayer, which is on Sunday, the church prayed earnestly and cried to God for mercy. In the midst of the prayers, the pastor asked that the boy should be brought forward to him to lay his hands on him. The child was brought forward, but when he wanted to lay his hand on the child, he heard a voice saying, "Please be kind to subscribe to this channel. Thank you. Let's move." The child was brought forward, but when he wanted to lay his hand on the child, he heard a voice saying, "Don't touch that thing." "That thing?" asked the pastor. "Yes," said the voice. "Don't touch it because this is not my gift," and asked the woman where she got it from. The pastor stopped praying, opened his eyes and said, "Madam, please don't be offended. The Spirit of God said you should tell us where you got the child from." The husband became angry at the question and started defending his wife, stating how they have been faithful worshippers. While he was still talking, the wife busted out in tears and narrated how her friend took her somewhere and she was given a goat to back and walk around the church, after which she became pregnant and gave birth to the child. Everyone was surprised, especially the husband, that all this happened without him knowing. Then the Spirit of God spoke through the pastor, saying that the child that God planned to give them, He will still give them at the appointed time. But this one she got from somewhere else will remain with her forever, and that she should make sure that nothing happens to him, that it will be a scar that will always remind everyone that whatsoever you didn't get from God is always fake. On hearing that, Mrs. Stacy wept bitterly and wished she had waited till the end. 6 months later, Mrs. Stacy became pregnant. She had a smooth pregnancy journey, and in due time, she was delivered of a set of quadruplets, 2 boys and 2 girls. She was overjoyed because God had finally done it. As the children were growing, there was something remarkable about them. They were endowed with a special kind of speed and favor. They all walked before they were 9 months. They started school early, and before the age of 16, they were done with secondary school. At 17, they were in higher institution, and before 23, they were done with youth service. The girls got married, which took them out of the country, and they proceeded with their masters. The boys ventured into businesses and were doing great. Mrs. Stacy always thanked God for the gift of those children. They made her life fulfilled. But whenever she comes home and meets the first child at home, who does nothing other than to eat, she will be filled with so much regrets, wishing she can turn back the hands of time to correct her mistakes. Of a truth, the boy was such a great burden and indeed a scar that she had to live with up to this day. This made her to always share her story to encourage people to always wait on God for everything in life. The wait may not be easy, smooth and palatable, but at the end, it it will always be worth the wait. So no matter what you want in life, be it a job, a child, marriage, a car, a house, wealth, and so on, please don't be so desperate that you end up getting it with a permanent scar. Please always wait for God's time. For God's time is always the best. If you enjoyed this video, you can drop your comments, subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.